Hey folks, welcome back. So in this lesson, we're going to do another walkthrough using Lambda, and we're certainly going to step up the degree of difficulty here, but you'll see as we go step by step, it's not really that hard. So we're going to use a combination of the management console and the command line to create our Lambda function and to create our event mappings, and finally to execute our function. And for our event source, we're going to use SQS, Simple Queue Service. So as you might expect, the arrival of messages into our SQS queue is our trigger. That's going to trigger our Lambda function. Ultimately, we'll be able to see that our function is working properly when Lambda communicates with CloudWatch, and we'll be able to view the CloudWatch logs and just verify that everything's working properly. Now, if you remember some of the things that we need for Lambda, the big one is a Lambda execution role. And just in the essence of time, I've done some things up front. I created an execution role, which we'll take a look at momentarily. I also created an EC2 instance for the sole purpose of using the command line to interact with our Lambda function. So first, let's go over to IAM and let's go to roles. And again, I've already created this role, but we'll step through as if we're going to create it. So I'll click Create Role and AWS Service. The trusted entity would be Lambda. Permissions. Now again, we're working with SQS. SQS is our event source, and we would select the AWS Lambda SQS queue execution role. Then we would click on Review, and I called it Lambda SQS role, and note it already exists, but I just wanted to walk through its creation, and then we would create it. So I'll cancel out of this. Again, it's created already. There it is. And of course, the policy for SQS execution role is attached to it. So we're all set with our execution role. Now let's go over to EC2 and let's get our connection information. So my key pair has already been downloaded. I just change to the downloads directory. Then I can use chmod, change my permissions, and paste in my SSH information, and go ahead and connect. Yes to continue. Let's just run a sudo yum update. Now for this walkthrough, we're going to use Node.js, and we just need to create an index.js file. This file is going to create our handler. Remember, we always need a handler, and that handler houses the method that is essentially our Lambda function. So I'll use the Vim editor and paste in our index.js file. This will be provided. Again, this is our handler. Here's our Lambda function. Note that there's a for each loop. So this will enable us to handle multiple SQS messages, and it's just printing this out to the console, as we'll see at the end of the lesson. So we can exit and write :WQ!! Now this just needs zipped up. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're creating this function zip file, and its contents are just our index.js. Now, before we get too far down the road, let's run AWS configure and plug in my access key, secret access key, and the region US East 1. Output can be default. All right. So our zip file and its contents are essentially our Lambda function in waiting. But from the command line now, we just have to actually create the Lambda function. So AWS, it's an AWS command, Lambda, create function, function name, process SQS record. Zip file. We just made that. It's going to create a handler. Specify the runtime of Node.js. Remember, we did that when we used the management console. Now let's go back over to IAM. There's our ARN for our execution role. That's it. That's going to create our Lambda function. Now, I'm getting an error, function already exists. I did a trial walkthrough of this, so confession there. But long story short, we have our Lambda function, and this is the command to create it. All right, so we're on our way, but we need an SQS queue. So let's go over to SQS and click Get Started. And let's name our queue, and we'll just keep it a standard queue. And let's just do a quick create. All right, now let's think about this. So we have a Lambda function, and we have an SQS queue. So the SQS queue is our event source and our Lambda function. How do we link these up? Well, the answer is we need to create an event source mapping. So we just need to map our event source, our SQS queue, to our Lambda function. This event source could be mapped to any Lambda function. And this is our command to do that. AWS Lambda. The command is create event source mapping. Function name. What do we want to map our event source to? This function, process SQS record. And we need to provide the ARN for our SQS queue, which is right here. So let's run that. And again, this is my second walkthrough of this. This has been created already. So we're good to go there as well. Just going to clear my screen because actually we're pretty much done from the command line. The rest we can do in the management console. So what we're going to do is send some messages to our queue. So these messages being sent to our queue are that trigger action. It's going to trigger our Lambda function. And our Lambda function is just basically relaying that message to our CloudWatch logs. So let's send about 5 messages. All right, let's just remember this message, testing our handy Lambda function. This should show up in our CloudWatch logs. Let's send this. Once, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so we sent this to our queue, and that is our trigger action again. Our Lambda function should act on this, and basically just to test this, final step in our little walkthrough is let's go over to CloudWatch. All right, so we're in logs. Here's our log group. Remember, we named our function process SQS record. Let's click on that. There's a log stream. Let's click on that. Bunch of information, but ultimately here's our message. Testing our handy Lambda function should be there 5 times. So with that, we have successfully completed our walkthrough. We set up an SQS queue as our event source, and from the command line, we created a Lambda function. We mapped our event source to our Lambda function, and we triggered our Lambda function, and everything is working properly. So we just keep building on our knowledge, and this lesson certainly dug a lot deeper than the previous lessons. Now, in the next lesson, we'll take a look at using Lambda with CloudFormation, and that will really crystallize things. So please join me in the next lesson.